Okay, guys, we're going to get started in a couple of minutes. We'll just do a quick shout out in terms of the topics we're going to cover today. It's Dr. Mo here from Inspire Medics, and you're joining the free webinar, which is the teaching webinar for AKT, RCA, and the MSRA exams. There are going to be two topics. They're pediatric themed. It's infantile colic and also nocturnal enuresis are the two key topics. So what we'd like you to do is, if you can hear me and see me, just give me a quick message into the chat box, and then we'll do some housekeeping rules to make sure everything's clear before we get started. So there's a chat box in the bottom hand corner of Zoom. If you can hear me and see me, just type into the chat box saying yes. And then the other nice thing to do would be to let us know where you're joining us from. So which part of the country, for example, Manchester, if you're doing the AKT, RCA, or the MSRA exam. And also let us know when you may be sitting the exam. So for example, Dr. Smith in Manchester sitting the AKT exam in 2 months' time. And that way we'll do a shout out for you guys in the next couple of minutes as soon as Dr. Sandhu joins us as well. So Saeed, thank you for confirming that you can hear us and see us. I'll do the same to you as well. And you're joining us from Grimsby. That's amazing. That's up north. Dr. Sandhu should be joining us fairly soon as well. But today's topic, as I mentioned, is going to be a pediatric theme topic. It's infantile colic and nocturnal enuresis. We'll probably get started in about 3-4 minutes, just waiting for some participants to join. About halfway through, we are going to have some discounts done for products that we have. So for example, tomorrow we've got the advanced RCA communication skills course. We're going to have a discount for that. And then also later on in a few months' time, we've got the big AKT mock, and we'll have a discount for that as well. So keep your comments coming. I can see there's a few coming through already from Niruka and Fariha. Let us know which exam you're sitting. So I think a few of you are typing in when you're going to sit, but you're not letting us know which exam you're sitting. So let us know which exam you're sitting as well. And then also if you've just joined us, what Dr. Sandhu can do is he can activate his video. Just click on start video. It should enable you to start. Okay, just a moment. I think Dr. Sandhu is trying to join us. Guys, if you just bear with us for a moment, I'm just going to try and sort out a small technical issue we're having. I think Dr. Sandhu is trying to join us on his camera, and we're going to try and fix that and get back to you as soon as possible. So just bear with us for a moment whilst we get it fixed. We will get started very, very soon. Okay, guys, we are going to get started soon. There's some small technical issues we are having. You should be fixed in the next 2 minutes or so. But if you're just joining us, this is the pediatric themed free teaching webinar. It's Dr. Mo here from Inspire Medics. We're covering two topics today: infantile colic and nocturnal enuresis. If you just joined us, you haven't missed much. But if you can let us know where you're joining us from, so there's a chat. There's a chat function in Zoom. You let us know which part of the country you're joining us from, which exam you're doing, and when you're going to do it. And we can do a shout out. The other thing to be aware of is that You can also type in questions in the Q&A icon. And if you want to submit any questions, that is the icon you need to click on. So just bear with us for a moment whilst we get started, and we'll be back with you very soon. Okay, guys, what we'll do is we'll do a shout out for everybody who's typed into the box, into the chat box, and then what we'll do is we'll get started after that as well. We are going to live stream this to our Facebook groups. So I can see Dr. Sandhu's now joined us. He should be able to activate his camera, which would then allow him to join us. Let's have a look. Okay, guys, we'll get started. I'm going to live stream this to Facebook. In the meantime, whilst you may not be able to see Dr. Sandhu, you'll be able to hear him, and he's going to do a shout out for the names.
Hello there, guys. Yeah, how you doing? It's Dr. Sandhu. A bit of a technical glitch there with the settings of the video. So I hope you're all doing well. So let us know whereabouts in the country you're joining us from, and we will give you a shout out to see which part. So which year are you in? And whereabouts exactly are you? So I've just joined actually. So I think some of you had already written in, but I can't actually see that. So Fatima has told us she's joining us from Bolton. And she's a GP ST2, so welcome, Fatima. I know some of you had already typed in, but I can't see that. So just quick type in, let us know whereabouts you are in the country and which level of your GP training are you in, or indeed you might even be preparing for the MSRA exam, which is of course the entrance into GP training. So we've got Oluwatumi, who is a GP ST1/2 from Grimsby. Welcome, Oluwatumi. Rabia Hashim has said hi. Hi, Rabia. Whereabouts are you joining us from? I'm in Oldham, ST3. Fantastic. We've got Islam Salim, who's an ST1, joining us from Norfolk. We've got Agoho. Forgive me if I pronounce these incorrectly. The names are coming up quite fast on the screens. We've got Agogo from Durham. We've got Aisha Farouk from Calgary in Canada. Interesting. So joining us from far afield. And Agogo is a GPST2. Delapo is an ST3 from Reading. Fantastic. Welcome, Delapo. Dr. Fariha Huck is a GP ST2 joining us from Shropshire. You've got Aisha Naveed, who is from Canada and is preparing for the MRCGP International Asia AKT exam. Fantastic. So it's nice to have people preparing for the International MRCGP joining us as well. We've got Tolu, who's joining us from Sutton Coldfield, not too far in Birmingham, for the GPST2 preparing for the AKT exam. Ali Mohammed is a GPST1 joining us from the north of the country, so high up as far as Middlesbrough. Must be very cold up there. It's about in fact 0 degrees at the moment, 0 to 1 degrees in Coventry. It's been about -2, -3. It's probably going to be even colder in the north of the country, so Middlesbrough, Oldham as well, I'd suspect will be pretty cold. Bolton, it will be pretty cold as well. So hope you're all keeping warm and you're wrapped up on this Saturday night as you join us for your iMedics revision webinars. Neru is a GP ST1 from London, preparing for the AKT in January 2022. Fantastic. So planning ahead. Right. So Aisha's won the competition for the coldest, which I knew it would be. So it's -33 in Canada. And that is correct because we do international doctor webinars for doctors preparing for the PLAB exam. We always do a shout out, and it's always fascinating because they join us from all over the world, places like the Middle East, where we ask them what the time and the temperature is, and it's like 30 degrees. Asia, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, 25, 28, 30 degrees. And then you get people from Canada who join us, and they always say things like -16, -20. We also get people from Russia. We've had one of our doctors from Siberia, and she always says as well, whenever we do the shout out, she tells us it's -20 degrees, and that's really, really cold. So Aisha wins that easily, -33. It must be very cold. Hope you're wrapped up. Have you got a nice hot tea or hot chocolate with you while you join us for this webinar? Waleed Mohammed, welcome, Waleed. Waleed is a GP ST2, also from Middlesbrough, again, north of the country. Fantastic. So lots of more people joining, which is good to see. So Mo, my video is not on. So if you want to make a start, Dr. Mo, you can make a start. We're 10 minutes in. We'll keep an eye on the chat, and Dr. Mo will make a start with his first topic.
Absolutely. And Dr. Sander, what we'll do is at the halfway stage, I'll make you the host, and then you should be able to come up on the camera.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah.
Slight technical issues today, guys. So you can't see both of us, but you should be able to see us one by one. So we'll work around the small issues we've got today. So as mentioned, we are going to be talking about enuresis and infantile colic. If you know the format of this webinar, you're going to know the outline of what I'm about to talk about. So I'm going to start off with the infantile colic latest guidelines. So we've got a pediatric theme for this hour. We're then going to take some questions from the audience and attendees, that's you guys, and then halfway through we'll also do some exclusive discounts. So tomorrow we've got the RCA Advanced Communication Skills course. We'll signpost you to our Google website page, and then Dr. Sam will cover enuresis, and you'll be able to see him also hopefully once we switch over in terms of the host function. Then he'll take some questions on enuresis. So again, it's a pediatric theme. And finally, some of our latest projects that we have in iMedics, which you're going to hear about towards the end. So without further ado, we'll get started. And as you might be aware, in terms of my structure, I'll try and teach you 3 key learning points. These are the 3 most important points you need to know for the AKT or the RCA or the MSRA exams. As long as you understand or know about those 3 key learning points, you should be generally fine. We try not to overload you with information, because obviously in some webinars you go to, it's like too much information on the PowerPoint slide, and it just goes over the top. So we try and stay away from that. So we hope you enjoy the next hour or so. You can make notes, but this is going to be recorded. We're going to upload it onto YouTube, and it's being live streamed into the Facebook group as well. But I'm sure if you pay attention, you will absorb a lot of the information we're about to give you. So as always, let's do a recap. So this is a pediatric themed webinar today, and infantile colic is a relatively common tendency that a parent may come to you with in a GP type setting. You can see it in a hospital setting as well, where a parent is worried it might be something more serious. And of course, it is a common question in the AKT, and also it can come up in the MSRA exams. So let's cover the 3 big W's, which are what, who, and why. So what is infantile colic? So this is information you should already know based on knowledge you have, for example, from medical school, perhaps the wards, perhaps some revision you've done in the build up to the exams you're doing. So first of all, infantile colic is excessive, but also inconsolable crying. A lot of time parents will come in, certainly been the case for myself for the last 3-4 years as a GP. Parents come in and they are fed up with their child crying all the time, and they don't understand why the child is crying. They've tried everything and they can't seem to be getting anywhere. But the important thing to know is actually the child is healthy and thriving. And what that means is they're not dropping any centiles in their growth. They're not having any faltering growth. And if the crying is more than 3 hours a day, if it's for more than 3 days a week, and if it's occurring for more than 1 week, then you can confidently go ahead and diagnose infantile colic. Now, there are some features of infantile colic you need to be aware of. So little babies can sometimes arch their back when they're crying. They can draw up their knees, and the evidence suggests that it occurs more towards the evenings, the afternoons, evenings, and night times, as opposed to the mornings. So if you know that from the history, you can relatively confidently go ahead and diagnose infantile colic. Of course, assuming there are no red flags, the child's otherwise well, if he's feeding normally, or he or she is feeding normally, and the information which is provided on this slide is also present within reason, of course, because you want to make sure you're not missing other conditions. For example, could be an upper respiratory tract infection, could be, for example, gastroenteritis. It could be a whole range of other things which you need to exclude, and usually your history would eliminate those things, and you can then diagnose infantile colic. The important thing to know about this condition is it usually only goes up to about it occurs usually in the first few weeks of life, and it can be diagnosed anywhere up to about 4 months. it's unusual to be diagnosing infantile colic after 4 months. And so if you start seeing a child at 5 and 6 months who's coming in crying all the time, you want to really be exploring your differentials. Now, the parents may ask you, so this is a common question that parents may ask is, why is the child crying all the time? At the moment, in terms of the evidence and the research we have, it's not quite clear why a child cries from infantile colic. There are some theories. A newborn baby in a new environment, consuming new food or previously it was from the placenta, so milk in this case, can cause some GI changes. There's also a theory around the bowels starting to move around. That's also another theory. And then there's also a theory around the environment in terms of if there's stress in the environment or parental anxiety, that can sometimes somehow induce infantile colic. But again, it's not very clear. So if you do get an exam question as to what is the definitive cause of infantile colic, there is no proven cause. So let's move on to the actual 3 learning points. So we're going to cover number 1, which is management. Number 2, things to avoid. Guys, if I am disappearing from your screen, I'm having some slight issues with my camera. So if you bear with me, it should, I am still here, and intermittently I may blink on and off. So there are 3 key learning points we're going to cover. 1 is management in terms of what you can try. The second thing is things you should avoid. And then the third thing that we're going to go through is when you should refer. So let's talk a bit about management. And some of the management points may sound a little bit strange, but actually they come directly from the NICE guidelines. So in terms of strategies for the baby, these are things you can do with the baby, which would help the symptoms. So NICE recommends holding the baby, gentle rocking motions. That could be in a pushchair, a pram, or a rocking crib, I should say crib. White noise seems to have some evidence behind it. So for example, a Hoover, washing machine, hairdryer going off in the background, a warm bath, and also winding after feed. So you see a lot of parents after they're breastfed or bottle fed, they're trying to wind their baby. It can help them burp, of course, and that seems to help with infantile colic type symptoms or presentations. So those are strategies for the baby. Now, in terms of strategies for the mother, because mums can get, and fathers as well, can get very stressed out when this occurs. They can become very anxious. It can affect their mood. So you want to be screening for symptoms of anxiety and depression. But in terms of the strategies you want for the parents, essentially you want to signpost family and friend support to make sure they're not alone. They can talk to other people around them. Also, there may be other parents they're aware of who have had a child with infantile colic, and those parents can provide reassurance that yes, it is frustrating whilst it happens, and it can be nerve-wracking, but eventually it does go away. You want to also explain to parents that it's important that they try and get some rest from obviously the continuous crying. So it's very, very natural that if a baby's crying, that parents want to try and settle the child, but if they're not able to, that can generate a huge amount of stress. So explain to the parent that they should try and get some rest themselves, perhaps take it in turn to look after the baby, and also a few minutes of time out where they can put the baby away in a safe place and they can go away and take a break from what's going on. Then there are support organizations. So these are places where you can signpost the parents to. So there's the National Health Service website. They've got a lot of information on infantile colic. There's the BMJ best practice leaflets, which are available online. There's also a very good website called Crisis, spelled CRY-SIS. And this website provides a lot of information on babies who do cry a lot and who are unable to sleep. And again, it's a really good website, provides lots of good information and support. And then finally, of course, you can signpost a health visitor who can, of course, give some input into the entire situation. So the first key learning point is management. There are 3 key areas where you can tackle with the parents. One is management strategies for the baby themselves, management strategies for the parents. And I know I've put mother, but I should say father as well. And then there's other organizations that the parents can tap into or other support services. So the second key learning point is what you want to avoid. A lot of parents will come to you and say, I've tried this, this, and this, or they may ask you about certain questions or may come up in the actual exams, like the AKT exam, the RCA, and the MSRA exam. And the key thing to note is that there are certain things which NICE does not recommend. There's little to no evidence for these things. So Infantile colic, which you can buy over the counter, is not recommended for infantile colic. The evidence base simply is not strong enough. If the mother is breastfeeding, you should not be recommending that the mother changes her diet. If the mother's formula feeding, again, you should not be recommending that the formula milk be changed. Now, there is some evidence that this helps, but it tends to be for babies who are, for example, lactose intolerant. So switching from a formula milk, which is contains lactose, to a lactose-free formula milk preparation can help some babies, but not for infantile colic. Again, you should not be recommending probiotics. So there's lots of probiotics you can now buy from the supermarkets. Those are not recommended for the baby or the parent in respect to infantile colic. And again, the same applies for herbal supplements or manipulation strategies. So some parents may, for example, massage the baby's spine. None of that has been shown to help. And then we've got a small picture down at the bottom of a box of Infacol, which some parents may try over the counter from a pharmacy or a big supermarket. So the second key learning point is things which should be avoided because they're not recommended, because there's not a strong enough evidence base. Thirdly, and lastly, this is the third key learning point, is when you should refer. Now, it's important to know this as a junior doctor, but also as a nearly qualified GP, or even in a hospital setting. And the reason for that is there are certain instances when you are going to have to refer on to the pediatricians, and you need to know what the criteria for that is. So it's interesting from NICE, if the parents feel like they're unable to cope with what's going on, that is a reason for referral. Now, I'm not quite sure why that's the case. It may be because if they're not coping, it can lead, for example, to anxiety and depression within the parents, which may lead to obviously further problems within the dynamic of the family structure, whether or not the baby gets, the best care. So that might be a reason to refer on to secondary care. The other reasons are more biologically related. So the infant is not thriving. Essentially, you're trying to rule out other conditions, which is why you refer on. So the child's dropping centiles, they're not feeding well, for example. And then, as we touched on earlier with the introduction and the recap for infantile colic, you don't tend to see it after 4 months a lot, generally speaking. So if the symptoms aren't improving or they're worsening after 4 months, you want to be referring. Most kids, and it's very important to know, most kids around the age of 6 months, the infantile colic should have gone. So between 4 to 6 months, it should have completely resolved. And if it's going on for longer than 4, up to about 6 months, then again, you want to be thinking, actually, is there a secondary cause for this, for the symptoms that are presenting here? And then finally, if you as a clinician suspect a underlying cause, again, what you can do is refer on, because the pediatrician could, of course, investigate that further. They can do blood tests and so on and so forth. So what we've done here is we've covered 3 key learning points. One was a recap, which was just an introduction. It's important to know the definition. So a child excessively and inconsolably crying for more than 3 hours a day, for more than 3 days a week, for more than a week altogether. But remember, the child is healthy and thriving. They're not dropping centiles. They're otherwise well. They're not faltering in their growth. And it's generally in the first few weeks of life, but it can be up to about 4 months of age. In terms of management, we covered 3 key areas: the strategies for the baby, strategies for the mother, and other organizations or places where you can signpost the parents to get support. The second key learning point was what you should recommend that the parents avoid. This could be very easily an AKT question. So it could be an option in terms of what would you recommend for infantile colic. One of the options is lactase, Coleaf, or Infacol. You should not be recommending them. The evidence base simply isn't there. And then finally, the last key learning point is when you should refer. So essentially, in a nutshell, you should refer if the parents are unable to cope, if there's an organic reason for perhaps the child crying, so they're not thriving, or you suspect another condition. And thirdly, if the symptoms have gone on for more than 4 months and they're not getting better or they're getting worse, again, it's like a red flag that something's not quite right. So this is a relatively short topic, but it's a key one to know, because parents can be extremely anxious when they come to see you. They genuinely think that their child is having a serious condition or a serious problem, because why else would a child cry? It's a good question. Why would a child cry if they're not in pain, or if they're not suffering from anything? And it's important, your role as a GP or a doctor, to try and reassure the parents and, of course, explore their ideas, concerns, and expectations. So, guys, what we're going to do is we're just going to we're going to jump out of this for a moment to allow you to ask questions. If you just joined us, welcome. We're about halfway through this webinar. I'm going to do a screen share. So quick show of hands before we come on. So if you've got a question, there's a Q&A icon. You can click on that, and you can submit your questions about infantile colic. So we've got a pediatric theme, as we've mentioned. But what I'd like you guys to do is this, on Zoom, you can actually raise your hand, and I'd like you to raise your hand if you're sitting the AKT exam in the next 6 months. So just raise your hands. If in the next six months, you're going to be sitting the AKT, MRC, GP, AKT exam. So I can see 5. So just raise your hand. Go ahead. Raise your hand. Don't be shy. 6, 7 people who are 8 people are going to be sitting the AKT exam. Okay, just lower your hands, guys, if you don't mind, for a moment. Lower all your hands for a moment. I'll do that for you. So I think, okay, fine, good. Okay, just raise your hands if you're sitting the RCA exam in the next 4 to 6 months. Just raise your hands if you're sitting the RCA exam in the next 4 to 6 months. So 2, 4, 5, 6, 6 people. Okay, 6, 7, 8 people. Okay, fine, good. Okay, amazing. And this, lastly, just raise your hands if you're sitting the MSRA exam in the next 4 to 6 months. Just raise your hands if you're sitting the MSRA exam in the next 4 to 6 months. So I think we've got 1. Okay, fine, good. So guys, what we're going to do now is I'm going to jump out of this screen into the iMedics website. We're going to come back to the questions. I know a few of you have got questions, but we're going to do some promotional discounts. So we have an AKT Big Mock exam on the 18th of April. It's on a Sunday, so most of you should be off on that day. And it runs between 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. And basically what we do is a real life 3-hour mock with 200 questions. Sorry, 3 hours and 10 minutes with 200 questions. You sit the exam in the morning, we take a 1-hour lunch break, and then we go through all the questions, myself and Dr. Sandu, with the latest NICE guidelines, including stats and health administration. And we give a breakdown of all the different questions, giving you key feedback to know key learning points for the actual exam. Now, as you can see, we've got a limited time sale price on this of $99.99. Just for you guys right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the price on this to $74.99, but only for so I'm going to the back end of the website now, so you may see that I'm going into like a strange place on the website. I'm going to drop it to $74.99, but only until the end of this webinar. So hopefully this should work. Okay, good. So the AKT mock, this for this webinar at 8 p.m. This will revert it back to $99.99. If you're interested in sitting the AKT Big Mock exam, it's now priced at $74.99, and that will bounce back. So you get 50% discount, 40% discount. It will bounce back to $99.99 at 8 p.m. So we'll change that back to its original promotion. And then for the RCA exam, we've got 2 dates. One is tomorrow, by the way, guys. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., we're going to do the RCA Advanced Communication Skills course. So what's that about? Well, it's a full day, and we start at 10, and then we cover 5 key domains for communication skills. These are high yield cases and skills that we cover, not your standard communication skills, which is like good eye contact, open questions. We cover advanced communication skills, things like angry patients, result stations, ethical stations. And we also do a live demo. So you can actually do a live demo with us, and we give you feedback for that. There's 5 live demos we do on the day, and it runs from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And it's really, really good value, actually. It's only £50. But what we're going to do for you now is we're going to drop this to, we're going to knock £5 off, and we're going to put it at $44.99, only until the end of this webinar. So you can see the price. I'm just going to refresh it. It's $49.99, only until 8 p.m. The price is going to remain at $44.99, £5 off, and it'll revert back to $49.99. So there's 2 dates that are available. It's the 14th of February, which is tomorrow, and then the 28th of March. It's an advanced Zoom online communication skills course we do for the RCA, and we teach you how to score the top marks when you're recording your videos. So really, really useful, myself and Dr. Sandhu. And we only teach you the skills which were taught to us by the highest scoring candidates in the UK. So we're in touch with the highest scoring candidates in the UK. So the RCGP releases a list of the top 3 scoring candidates each sitting for each year. And we've been in touch with those candidates, and we incorporate their skill set into this course. So this to remind yourself, only for the next half an hour, $74.99 for the AKT Big Mock, and then $44.99 for the RCA Advanced Communication Skills course. And then the last thing to add, guys, I think I've bounced into the PLAB exam there. It should have been. So we've got a gold package. We've got the AKT Gold Package. So a lot of you subscribe to the AKT free question bank, which is amazing. Like you get 3,000 questions almost for free for nothing. But there's a free AKT question bank, but there's also a gold package there. So the gold package, it's going to come up on your screen now, has 750 teaching videos, 750 extra MCQs. It also has 750 NICE guidelines podcasts, which have been summarized, and you also get free flashcards sent out to your home address. So this should be coming up in the next second or so. So there we go. The gold package, as you can see, coming up on your screen. is basically an extra 750 MCQs, 750 revision podcasts, 750 teaching videos, and free flashcards. Now, it's important to know that the gold package is don't pass, don't pay. So it's priced at $149.99 because you get a lot of content. But as you can see, the gold package is don't pass, don't pay, which means if you fail the AKT exam and you've got the gold package, we'll refund you all your money. And so that's a really big incentive we've got in place, but it's really jam-packed with information, different modes of learning, video learning, podcast learning, flashcard learning. And if you're the type of person who wants to like learn in different ways on the way to work, you're commuting, you want to listen to podcasts, if you're on your phone whilst in a lunch break, you want to watch a video, that's a really good way of doing things. So that's the AKT Gold Package. So guys, I'm just going to bounce back into the PowerPoint, and what we'll do is we'll take some questions, and then Dr. Sandhu will move on to his topic. So, so this is a question from Tolu. So how early does infantile colic present? Tolu, it normally presents in the very first few weeks of life, but anywhere up to about 3 to 4 months, you can still make the diagnosis of infantile colic. But generally speaking, it's the first few weeks of life. Ali, so Ali's got a question. To make a diagnosis, is it supposed to be 3 hours of continuous crying day or intermittent episodes per day? So it's 3 hours of continuous crying or more than 3 hours. I'll bring that slide up again. So it's more than 3 hours a day, continuous crying, for more than 3 days a week, for more than a week in total. So it's excessive and inconsolable crying. So the child's crying all the time for more than 3 hours. That occurs more than 3 days per 7 days, i.e. more than 3 days per week. And it's happened for more than a week in total in terms of duration. So Ali, hope that answers the question. And I think what we'll do now is I'm going to hand over to Dr. Sandhu shortly. And he's now going to do his topic. So I'm going to make you the host, Dr. Sandhu, in just a second.
Yeah.
And you should be able to see Dr. Sandhu on the screen very, very soon.
Perfect. So welcome, guys. So we're back on the screen. So, okay. And I'm going to swap over. So welcome to the second part of your AKT, RCA or MSRA preparation webinar. So we've done the first topic, which was obviously infantile colic. We're now going to move on to your second topic, which is bedwetting, also known as enuresis. And we'll do an overview of the current NICE guidance. So you've probably attended, if you've attended before, you'll know the structure that me and Dr. Mo operate to make sure that you get the highest level of learning. We keep it quite focused. My slides, so we'll kind of talk about what enuresis is in terms of its classification. We'll talk about the risk factors, how we assess a patient with enuresis, and we'll talk through the current NICE guidance when it comes to managing this presentation. So classification, remember you've got 3 key types of enuresis that you need to know of. The first one is what we call primary bedwetting, but without daytime symptoms. So, and it's key to remember that the patient has no symptoms in the daytime. And it's basically, as we said before, in children, but also young people where they've never ever had continence before at nighttime, but they're okay in the day. So this is a child, primary means that they've never ever been, continent before, and they have no daytime symptoms. And there's 3 main causes. Sometimes it's sleep issues, difficulties in sleeping that can cause and trigger off the urine actions. Sometimes it's just polyuria. They just get that urge to urinate. They may be drinking a lot of fluid, and that could be a trigger. And sometimes it's bladder dysfunction. So whenever a small amount of urine goes into the bladder, it triggers off the bladder to act like the bladder is full, and it gives the child that urge to urinate. The second type of enuresis is actually primary bedwetting, but with daytime symptoms. So that's when you get a child or a young person, and again, they've never had continence at night before, but they've also got daytime symptoms. And those symptoms can be things like wetting the bed, or waking up regularly to go and pass urine, or having that urge to pass urine all the time. And what can be the causes of this? Well, you've got overactive bladder. So again, that feeling, the urine goes into the bladder and the child is just unfortunate. Their bladder is very sensitive and it overreacts and it causes them to obviously wet the bed. There can be congenital problems as well, so like ectopic ureter, for example, where they're getting recurrent urine and incontinence at night, and so that's something to be mindful of. Although most of the time, if it was a congenital thing, it would have been picked up very early on in life. Then you can get neurological problems. So remember, we know that we have the sacral nerves that are involved in kind of our urine mechanisms. And if you've got a neurological issue, damage to the nerves in the lower back, for example, then that can be a trigger for enuresis. And then two things that which we may see in primary care. One is obviously a water infection, so a UTI. And the second thing is chronic constipation. The theory with constipation is obviously all that hard poo builds up and it starts to put pressure on the bladder, and that gives the child the urge to urinate. The third type of classification is what we call secondary bedwetting, and that's basically a child who gets enuresis, but they were previously dry at night for more than 6 months. That's the key thing to remember. So they've had no symptoms, they've been okay for 6 months, and then they start to get regular enuresis. And often with this does normally indicate that there's something else going on which is causing these symptoms, because otherwise the child would have had it before. It wouldn't have just come out of the blue after 6 months. And what kind of things can cause it? Well, we've touched on two of them, which is obviously an infection of the urine and constipation. But another thing to be mindful of is diabetes. And obviously in this age group, you're more likely to pick up type 1 diabetes. And it's not uncommon for this to happen. So, you should be mindful of that if you've got a child with polyuria, polydipsia, and so forth. And then, of course, there's psychological stuff. So if the child is having problems at home or the parents are having problems at home, that can have a knock-on effect on the children, and that can lead to enuresis. And that fits in. So those last two points fit well with each other, which can lead to behavioural and emotional problems in the child, and that can then manifest as a secondary enuresis. What are the risk factors of developing this condition? Well, the first risk factor, which NICE touches on, is actually having a positive family history. So parents, brothers and sisters who've had the same issue, there's a good chance that the next sibling will also have the same problem. The second risk factor is being male. So it's 2 to 1 in favour of males in comparison to females when it comes to bedwetting. Delays in attaining bladder control. Now, most children go through a similar trajectory, but occasionally some children can have a delay in their bladder function, and therefore they are more prone to developing enuresis. Excess weight is another trigger factor for enuresis, and again, the theory being the excess weight in the area is putting pressure on the surrounding structures, especially the bladder, and that can lead to enuresis. Then you've got the psychological and behavioural spectrum. So you're going to have a number of things. So, for example, ADHD, autism, or autism spectrum disorder, or depression with anxiety. These are the common classical psychological factors that could be involved in enuresis. So how should we assess a child? Well, NICE says there's 4 things that you need to think about. The first thing is the actual pattern of the child's bedwetting. So, for example, we need to ask the parents, Mrs. Smith, how many times a week does, Joshua get up, or how many times of the week does he wet the bed? And obviously, if it doesn't happen that often, that's a reassuring sign. If he just does it every so often, that's like, well, okay, he might have had a bad day, may have had a bad tummy, and that's absolutely fine. But obviously, if he's doing it most nights, that's more of a worrying sign. Then you can ask him about sort of how much urine is actually passed. What time of the night does he wake up, or does she wake up to pass the urine? And does the child actually wake up and go to the toilet, or do they pick up the child and carry him or her to the toilet? The second thing to think about is the actual fluid intake that the child has. So what we want to work out is 2 things here. Firstly, are the parents actually restricting the fluid intake? And that can be worrying, because if they restrict it too much, the child can become dehydrated. So we need to find out, are you actually stopping, Joshua from having fluid in the day? If so, how much does he have in a typical day? How much fluid does he take before bed? So you want to just work out kind of what's happening, and you can, NICE does say you can keep a 2-week diary of the child's fluid intake, their bedwetting and their toileting patterns, to see if there's some kind of relationship between the 3. You can weigh nappies, so you can tell parents, weigh the nappies or pull-ups to work out how much urine is being passed at night compared with the daytime. And so this is just assessing the kind of the amount of urine, of course, working out the amount of fluid that they have. It's also important to note is the child being given energy, kind of caffeinated drinks. Now, obviously, it's not very common that you hear that children, for example, have tea and coffee, but they do have fizzy drinks, and fizzy drinks like Coca-Cola and various other things will contain caffeine, and they can give you that kind of, urge to pass urine. The other two things to look at when you're assessing a child with enuresis is actually how things are at home. So it's worth asking, whereabouts is the toilet in relation to Joshua's room? I mean, if it's really far away, then the child is going to be quite reluctant to go. Do they share a bedroom? Now, that's very important, because when we go on to the management, you'll hear about the Enuresis Alarm. Now, if you've got 2 kids, or maybe one kid who's a little bit older than the one who's got the enuresis, it may have a negative impact on the other child, because if that alarm keeps going off at night, it means essentially you have 2 or 3 children, depending on how many are sharing the bed, who are having a bad night's sleep, and that can then lead to other chronic health issues. And the fourth thing is, why have they actually come in to see you today? So often, in your RCA, we ask the patients, tell us a bit about, what brings you in today? What were you hoping I could do for you today? So you're trying to work out, why have they attended? Do they just want reassurance? Do they just want you to say, Dr. Sandhu, can you just tell me, is this normal for a 3-year-old or 5-year-old or 6-year-old, or should I be worried, doctor? Or they might consult us because the child is going for a sleepover, or like a camping trip, or going to stay with some relatives, or that they are kind of going on some kind of school trip, and so they want some short-term treatment because they know the child is going to struggle when they go to their relatives or when they go to their school trip. And the other thing you want to work out is, are the actual parents and the child, would they be willing to engage with behavioral interventions like the Enuresis Alarm, like the positive reward systems? Because for those to be effective, you need to have parents and a child who will engage with that. And of course, the last thing as well, and this is holistic care. So remember, when you're doing your RCA exam, you want to get the top marks. So you want to work out how the parents or the carers are actually coping with it, because ultimately, when you've got a child who's bedwetting, it's going to have an impact on them. How are they coping? Their sleep is going to be impaired. They're going to have the issue of changing their bed sheets regularly. How do they respond? How do they behave towards the child? What effect is it having on them? And then obviously we can offer them some support, mechanisms to cope if they are struggling. And obviously the other thing to bear in mind, so we've talked about constipation a couple of times already, and NICE does say if the child is younger than 5, then you need to obviously assess them for constipation. And the reason for that is because the undiagnosed chronic long-term constipation is actually a common reason why children wet the bed, or they soil in their, in their pants or in their nappies. And it's something that can often go miss. So we should always be asking the parents, when did Joshua last open his bowels? Tell me a bit about the bowels. What was his stool like? Is he straining? Was there any blood? And so forth. So in terms of management then, so what do we actually do when it comes to management? So NICE gives us, a bit of a system really to kind of managing this. So the first thing to look at is, if you've got a case of primary bedwetting without any daytime symptoms, then there's things that we need to give. We need to give education. So what do we mean by education? Well, the first and foremost is diet. So we want to make sure that the child is having a healthy diet, and they're not restricting the fluid, because he or she is still going to need adequate hydration. They're growing children. They obviously it's developing, and so we shouldn't remove that from them. The second thing is obviously avoiding drinks that contain a lot of caffeine. So coffee and tea are the common things that come to mind for adults. It'd be very rare for you to see a child who drinks tea or coffee, but like we said before, they will be drinking things like cola and caffeinated like fizzy drinks, and so we have to warn parents that don't give them that in the evening, because that's probably one of the triggers. Then you've got things like, we've mentioned the concept of lifting and waking. So NICE makes a point of this, that lifting and waking the child during the night does not promote long-term dryness. And that's what sometimes parents think, well, if I just pick my little boy or my little girl up and just take him or her to the toilet, that will be okay. And actually what you're trying to do is you're trying to kind of, if the child wakes at night, take them to the toilet, try and take them there, avoid that, encourage that behavior, where they actually start to get into that habit. Then you've got other things, so a positive reward system. So these are basically kind of, some kind of reward. It doesn't have to be, something amazing. It can just be a star chart, for example, which is offered to a child when they've got a dry night. And again, you can adjust that as the child gets older. You can give rewards if they drink the amount of fluid that you set them as a target for the day. So these are the kind of classic things that, the NICE guidance would recommend. And normally it says if the child's under the age of 5, reassure that most children will get better even without treatment. And of course, you would have asked them about constipation, as we touched on earlier. If the child is 5 years and older, and their bedwetting is not that often, so the NICE classifies it as infrequent, in other words, less than twice a week, then it's okay for us to reassure that bedwetting will get better, and we can just do a wait and see approach, and most parents will be happy with that. But obviously, if you've explored their ideas, concerns, and expectations, and they do want some kind of treatment, you have a couple of options. The first thing is the Enuresis Alarm, normally combined with a positive reward system that we just touched on, and that's the first line treatment. The Enuresis Alarm is interesting because what will happen is it will kind of trigger off when the child starts to urinate, and that will then act to try and get them into that habit of going to the toilet and urinating there rather than in the bed. And obviously short term, there is a drug called desmopressin, which we can give, and desmopressin does work well in reducing the level of incontinence that the child has had. It's often given in short periods only, so often parents may come when they've got a child who is going on a trip or something like that, and in which case desmopressin is given. And obviously then if all of that starts to fail, then you've got the option of referring them to your kind of secondary care, not specifically as an inpatient, but rather as an outpatient. They often have community clinics in pediatrics where you can refer the child to. Then you've got the second thing to think about. So remember, we mentioned primary bedwetting with the daytime symptoms, and the NICE guidance is quite clear. It says you should refer children with primary bedwetting and daytime symptoms to the pediatric team or an enuresis clinic if you've got one locally, and they will run some further tests. Normally test the urine for ketones, sugar, and obviously an infection, but make sure specifically there's no kind of diabetes going on, aside from a water infection, and of course the assess for constipation, and they may do a scan as well to make sure there's no congenital anomaly that's been missed. And NICE would also say that we should consider referring children over 2 years of age who are still kind of struggling to not wet themselves during the day as well as the night. So that's kind of like more of a chronic issue, and it's not settling despite the fact that they should be improving with the help and support that's been given so far. And then you've got secondary bedwetting. So this, remember, we told you this is the one where you start wetting the bed having previously been fine for more than 6 months. And this is basically, you want to look for an underlying cause, and you can do that in primary care and especially at the moment, because we're consulting over the phone, you can try and encourage the parents to capture a urine, and then when they get to the surgery, you can dip it and make sure there's not a water infection there. Obviously, again, inquiring about constipation is very important, because if it's there, we can treat it with things like Movicol sachets. And obviously, if you find that it's out of your remit, or if it's, if you can't find a cause, or the symptoms are persistent, we can refer them to the pediatric team or the enuresis clinic. And that's onto the questions. If you're not already doing so, I'm sure you'll be following us on social media. So the Instagram page, inspire_medics, has lots of daily revision cards, which is worth doing for your revision. The Facebook groups, specifically for AKT, RCA, and MSRA. If you're joining us at the moment, you're probably live in our Facebook group watching this, and this webinar will remain in that group, and that group has revision, daily revision cards and videos. The YouTube, do like, subscribe, and follow the Inspire Medics YouTube channel, where you'll see lots of daily revision videos. We've got some more coming up in the next week or so for your revision, which is tailored for everything MSRA, AKT, and RCA. If you're on Twitter, check out inspire_medics. And again, we'll have revision on there, as well as daily kind of exam updates and medical information. So lots of things to keep you occupied there. So do check us out on the social media. We will post them in the chat as well. And I will end the share screen and open to any questions if there are any.
So guys, just to remind you, we still have the promotional discount on for the AKT. We're going to leave it on till about 5 or 10 minutes past 8. I can see a few of you are trying to check out, so we're going to make sure that we're not going to close it. That's the AKT Big Mock. It's dropped from $99.99 to $74.99. The RCA Advanced Communication Skills course is tomorrow. The usual price is $49.99. We've just dropped it until 10 past 8 today to $44.99. And don't forget the AKT Gold Package, which is basically $149.99, but it's don't pass, don't pay. So if you don't pass the AKT exam, you'll essentially get all your money back. So it's super, super low risk. And I think 1 or 2 of you asked about it. So that's a good sign. A few of you are going through checkout, which we can see. Dr. Sanders included the social media handles as well in the chat box. If you like to keep, if you like to follow us, because we do put out revision content on a regular basis. For those of you going through checkout, don't worry, the system won't lock out at 8 o'clock. I'll just prolong it until 10 minutes past 8, but the prices will revert back to normal. So over to you, Dr. Sanders, if you want to show perhaps the participants the forum section perhaps of the website.
Yeah, it sounds like a plan. Yeah, so let's get the share screen back on. So a couple of things, guys, just to be mindful of. So just while the last few, if there's any questions that are coming up, a couple of exciting things on the website that you may have seen or may not have seen. We have launched a brand new forum. So if you go onto the iMedics website and you click forum, you can basically connect with lots of different doctors from all over the world, but most importantly for you guys across the country. So for example, GP exams, you know, your VTS, AKT, RCA, CSA, and so forth. And you can see people from across the country posting in there. So if there's any queries that you have, anything that's worrying you, post it in there. You know, we keep an eye on it as well, so we can contribute. And there's doctors, GP trainees across the country who may have a similar issue to you. So do start using that. That's only just been launched very recently. It's got lots of very useful things, study tips, jobs and careers, finances and tax, you know, CBDs, which will be going up in due course, social life and various other things as well. But it's quite exciting. You can, I mean, it's actually an international user base because we have got doctors that we train from all over the world. So you can use it from all kinds of aspects. So do use the forum because it is there for you guys. As a system to support you through, and that, remember, is on the homepage. You've probably already seen the patient information leaflets that we've launched as well. So if you go into blog at the top here and you click doctor's blog, and you can actually see lots of different revision material that we've produced for different doctors at different stages of their careers, basically. But lots of useful stuff that you'll find, like how to pass the MSRA exam, guide to studying, guide to procrastination. But you'll find guidelines as well. So things like, for example, you know, managing asthma in children. If I take that article, this is free, by the way, available on the iMedics website. You can see how our team have made it really nice and engaging so that you can learn the key facts and use it for your revision. You know, it's got the management, the key features, and it's nice, it's easy. You can, you know, use it on your mobile, your iPad, as well as your revision. And obviously patient information is the other one. So if you click that, you get tiny 60-second patient leaflets. You can see 168 there already. And if we take, let's take Polymyogrammatica. So some of you said you're preparing for the RCA exam. This is excellent because it's in lay person's language. So it's useful for you when you're explaining what is polymyogrammatica, what are the symptoms, how do we diagnose it? And we just kept it nice and simple. So you use that simple lay terminology when you're revising for the RCA. And it's also something you can signpost your patients to in clinic because people want to read stuff that's easy to follow. So it talks about what it is, what the symptoms are, how you diagnose, how you treat it, but it's nice, easy to digest. And that again is available if you go on blog and you click on patient information, and you will come to that page. So that takes you back to the main bit. So any questions that have cropped up?
I think the last thing to add, Vikas, I can't obviously activate my camera, but there's the Google reviews. I've just put in the link. Dr. Sandhu, if you click on that link, if you don't mind, we've got a free AKT question bank. Like it's got I think 3,000 questions in it now. You know, we don't charge you for that, neither do we charge you for these webinars. If you don't mind, could you leave us a quick Google review, hopefully a nice one. The link is inside the Zoom chat. Click on it. Dr. Sanders is going to do a share screen to show you what it will show when you click on that link. If you can leave us a review, it literally takes 20 seconds to do. And myself and Dr. Sandu and the rest of the team at iMedics would really appreciate it. And that's considering that we've done the AKT question bank completely for free. It took us 3 years to do that question bank. 3 years of solid work. We're adding to it all the time. We're proofing it all the time. We're updating the guidelines all the time. And we aren't charging you guys at all for that.
Yeah. So guys, this is what it looks like really. So Dr. Mo's just put the link in. We've had 110 Google reviews. We are 5-star rated, which is great to see. Doctors from different parts of their careers, some of them the CSA, RCA, AKT, as well as junior doctors and international doctors. So do give us a nice review if you found this useful. You just simply click from here and then you can go in and write a review. There's a button at the top there. And if I was to write a review, I'm not going to write a review because it will be me, but I don't want to do that. But you can see, you know, people are, here's someone who did the mock AKT. This was the last one, so it was only a few weeks ago. She got 73%, but Evelyn there, so we appreciate that. And these are just people who have gone through some of our training programs for the different things. Dr. Shah from GP training. So, you know, if you found it useful, drop us a nice review, a nice little comment. It's always useful. Remember, the AKT question bank is free. The 3,000 questions are free. Nobody else does that. Even your RCGP is part of the membership that you pay for. So all of that stuff, the blogs, the forums, a lot of effort and time goes into that. And that's designed for you guys. And we've got a team and we have to pay that team as well. So a lot of costs coming from our side. So it's all there. So just if you can, you might as well do it now. If you can, literally take you 2 seconds, nice quick review. And obviously we would appreciate that. And that's literally on the link that Dr. Mo's posted in, and you'll see this bit here and you just click write a review and that will be from there. And I will leave it at that. So I don't think there's anything else to add then, Dr. May. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we...
Just one or two things. A few of you have subscribed to the RCA Communication Skills course tomorrow. You'll get a Zoom link before the day. So don't worry, you will get, as long as your email's correct, you will get a Zoom link for tomorrow's RCA Communication Skills course. Don't forget that the gold packages don't pay, don't pass, which means... don't pass, don't pay. The AKT Gold Package, if you don't pass, you'll get your money back. The AKT has been dropped by £25, so the AKT Big Mock, and that'll be available now for the next 10 minutes. And please don't forget to leave us a Google review, which would really, really appreciate. I don't think there's anything else to add. I can't activate my camera, otherwise you would have seen me. Slight technical glitches today, but we appreciate your patience. And apart from that, Dr. Sandhu said, if there's anything else you want to add, we can then wrap up.
Yeah, no, fair enough. So, so thank you guys, obviously, for joining us. As we always say, hope you're all safe, hope your families are safe as well. Do keep in touch with us. We will obviously be emailing out the next topic. The webinar will become available on our YouTube channel within the next 48 hours. So normally Monday, the team will get editing. And then obviously we'll have it up and loading for you. Discounts are there for the courses, as Dr. Mo said. They'll be there for another 10 minutes or so. So if you want to activate those links for the AKT mock or the next RCA course, you can join us tomorrow if you wish, but the next one's in March. But otherwise, it's a goodbye from me, and I'll see you at the next webinar. And I'll leave you, Dr. Mo, any final words? Or...
Yeah, guys, if you click on that Google review link, so you've got it on your browser or your device, and then once we close this Zoom webinar, obviously this would all disappear, but you'll get an email in 2 days' time with a recording for this, and also the link for the next webinar. And we'll probably mix it up a little bit, considering it's a new year, and we're going to try and get some latest nice guidelines topics. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you for taking the time out. We always appreciate seeing you guys here. And of course, don't forget to mention it to your friends and colleagues, and do stay safe.